Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a truly remarkable story about an abandoned seaside lighthouse, and we're going to discover how its long-forgotten secrets can completely reshape our understanding of hope, purpose, and mentorship. If you've ever felt like your future is kind of cloudy, or you found yourself wondering what true, lasting impact actually looks like, well, the source material we are unpacking today holds some absolutely incredible insights. Let's get right into it. Now, to most folks in the town, this 100-year-old tower was literally just a building made of stone and glass. A practical maritime tool, nothing more. But the oldest fishermen, they knew the truth. They understood that the real function of this structure wasn't just geographical navigation, it was emotional and spiritual navigation. It was a literal lifeline for people who were drowning in despair.
All right, let's jump straight into part one, the abandoned lighthouse. And here we're going to meet our main character, Ethan.
So think about this parallel for a second. On one hand, you have the lighthouse. It used to be this bright beacon kept by Ethan's late father, but now it's completely abandoned. The light's been out for years, it's covered in dust and creeping ivy. And on the other hand, you have Ethan himself. He's a teenager spending his days stuck in a tiny repair shop fixing rusty engines and old fishing gear. He's absolutely convinced his future has already vanished while all his friends are out planning these exciting lives in big cities. He is a total mirror of the very structure his father used to keep. Both the tower and the boy are just stuck in this state of decay, isolation, and, honestly, absolute hopelessness.
Which brings us to part two, a spark in the dark, where a totally unexpected event happens. The mundane status quo of Ethan's life is about to be completely shattered. Picture this. He's walking home in the pouring rain one evening, and he notices something that should be impossible. There is a faint, golden light flickering right at the top of the dead tower. Curiosity wins out over his cynicism, so he climbs that long, echoing spiral staircase, and at the very top, he doesn't find a ghost. He finds an elderly man quietly cleaning the enormous glass lens. The man just turns to him and simply says, "My name is Thomas. I used to help your father." Ethan is understandably completely baffled by this. He points out the obvious, right? The lighthouse is abandoned. There isn't even any electricity connected to it anymore. But Thomas just smiles and drops this profound realization on him. He says, "Yet some lights never truly go out. The strongest light doesn't come from electricity." Thomas is deliberately challenging Ethan's logic here. He's planting the very first seed that this particular lighthouse operates on a completely different kind of power. We're not talking about wires and bulbs here. We're talking about something far more enduring. So, the very next morning, Ethan returns. And Thomas, he doesn't give a grand speech. He doesn't deliver a philosophical lecture. He literally just hands Ethan a broom. Over the next few weeks, the two of them meticulously execute these physical repairs. They sweep, they fix the broken glass, polish that massive lens, paint the rusty railings, and rebuild the damaged stairs. But as they work through these physical steps, we start to see that these actions are actually a brilliant metaphor and a real catalyst for Ethan's internal, emotional repair. Step by step, the dust is being cleared from Ethan's mind, too. Now, the really fascinating thing about Thomas's mentorship style is his silence. He rarely speaks while they're working. Instead of just spoon-feeding advice, he uses this brilliant Socratic method. He'll just randomly ask these piercing, fundamental questions, like, what makes a person successful? He does this to actively break down the walls of Ethan's cynical worldview. And Ethan, being a typical teenager, gives the obvious, superficial answer. He says, money. Thomas calmly rebuts with, what happens when money disappears? Ethan is left completely speechless. And Thomas repeats this exact pattern later on. When he asks what makes someone strong, Ethan naturally says muscles. And Thomas simply asks, and if age takes those away? Again, crickets from Ethan. Thomas is systematically stripping away the temporary external things that Ethan values, all to reveal something permanent. Little by little, it clicks for Ethan. He realizes Thomas isn't just fixing a building. After weeks of grueling work, with the lighthouse finally looking alive again, Thomas reveals the ultimate truth. He tells Ethan that his father believed every person becomes a lighthouse for someone else. But how? Well, by projecting 4 specific traits: kindness, courage, honesty, and hope. The idea is that when you project these outward, you literally become a light for people who are lost in their own lives. And that brings us to part 3, the great storm. It's time to put all this theory into practice. Before Ethan can even fully process this massive revelation, a violent storm rolls in out of nowhere. We're talking dark clouds, shaking thunder, crashing waves.
Total panic strikes the village because a fishing boat is trapped near the deadly Black Reef. And without the lighthouse, those sailors are doomed. Putting all of his recent lessons into immediate action, Ethan knows they can't rely on electricity, so he grabs a tiny old emergency oil lamp from beneath the stairs. They carry it all the way up, and because they had spent weeks meticulously polishing that giant lens, the glass catches that tiny, fragile flame and multiplies it. It creates this brilliant, massive beam stretching across the dark ocean, guiding the sailors safely back to the harbor.
Moving right along to part 4, Becoming the Light, where our hero is celebrated. So the crisis is averted, and the entire village is celebrating Ethan as an absolute hero. But Ethan knows the real truth. He turns around to thank his mentor, only to find that Thomas has mysteriously vanished, completely without a trace. The only thing left behind is an old notebook sitting on a table. He opens it, and inside the first page, written in his late father's familiar handwriting, is this incredibly powerful note. If you are reading this, then the lighthouse has chosen you. Remember, people don't need perfect heroes. They need someone willing to keep the light alive when the world becomes dark. This absolutely brings Ethan to tears. He finally grasps the true legacy-driven purpose of the lighthouse, and from that day forward, he willingly takes up the mantle as the new keeper.
Which leads us beautifully into part 5, the cycle of hope and passing the torch.
Fast forward a few decades, and we get to see the beautiful ripple effect of Ethan's mentorship. The lighthouse becomes famous again, drawing travelers from all over the place. But Ethan always makes sure to remind them that its real purpose isn't just to shine physically. It's to prove that even the smallest light defeats the greatest darkness. Over the years, he comforts a frightened little girl lost in the fog, who, by the way, later grows up to be a Marine rescue captain, and she credits Ethan as the one who taught her that hope is brighter than fear. Later on, he helps a young fisherman who's ready to quit, teaching him to repair his broken boat by showing him that broken things just need patient hands. And finally, as an old man with white hair, he meets a teenage boy. This hopeless teenage boy climbs the stairs of the lighthouse, looks right at old Ethan, and says these exact words, "I don't think I have a future." For Ethan, it is a staggering moment of déjà vu. He recognizes those words instantly, because they're the exact same words he used to believe about himself all those decades ago, back when he felt his own life was nothing but rusty engines and decay. And you know what Ethan does? Instead of offering some grand speech or giving unearned advice to this kid, he simply smiles. He smiles exactly the way Thomas had once smiled at him. He hands the boy a broom and says just 3 words, "Help me clean." It so beautifully and perfectly brings the whole story full circle, restarting that cycle of passing hope, mentorship, and light down to the next generation. Because ultimately, whether Thomas was just a regular man or some kind of guardian sent to protect the broken, the result is exactly the same. As this explainer reveals, the core takeaway from the source material is that our greatest human purpose isn't to accumulate wealth or achieve fame. Not at all. Our highest calling is to become a light that helps someone else find their way through their own dark storms. The lighthouse, it's really just a metaphor for the human heart. So I want to leave you with one final, vital question to reflect on in your own life today. Who can you guide home? Thank you so much for exploring this with me, and please never underestimate the power of your own light.